Hey home bakers, it's Jack here, bakewithjack.co.uk, bringing you your weekly bread making tip every single Thursday. And this week, here's 5 signs you can look for to let you know that your bread dough is fully kneaded. Let's go! Hello to you and welcome back. It's Thursday, that means it's bread tip day, and if you're brand spanking new here, my name is Jack and I'm here on a mission to help you make amazing bread at home. If you fancy that, if you like this video, have a think about clicking that subscribe button. Let's get into it, shall we? So it can all be very confusing when you're deciding whether your bread dough is fully kneaded or not. And this I wanted to share with you today is advice that I share with people in my bread making courses. The steps we go through to determine whether or not our bread dough is ready. There are 5 things that we can look for in our dough to reassure you that it's done. So then you can get into the resting stage and feel confident that it's all ready and everything else will be smooth. Cut to the table. So for the purpose of this video, we're going with a straight up white yeasted dough. And in my bowl, I've got 500 grams of flour, 8 grams of salt goes in here. In this jug, I've got some yeast actually, 12 grams of yeast out of this box, already dissolved into some water, 320 grams that, if you're interested, is a hydration rate of 64%. Let's get it into the bowl and then we mix. Okay, all mixed up, nothing dry left in the bowl. Let's get it out and let's have a clean up as well. Okay, so now I always recommend people to have a look at your dough now, because then you appreciate what happens when it changes. Seriously, have a look at it now. It's all a little bit lumpy and bumpy. There's a wet bit there and there's a dry bit there. It's really quite firm. It always looks a bit dodgy, a little bit ropey, but the most important thing is this. When you pull it, break it, hold it like this, it will just break itself off. It's really delicate and it's really fragile. It doesn't take much effort to break it into pieces. And if you have a good look at your dough now, you really appreciate what happens when it changes, and what the change is and what we are looking for. What a mess. Never put flour down at this point. If you're sick of me saying never put flour down, never put flour down at this point. We need straight on the table and take your watch off. I'm going to need this in the traditional sense with the heel of my hand pushing across the table and bringing it back on top for around about 8 to 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been 8 to 10 minutes now, and if you have a look at the top of it, you'll see that it's not quite smooth. A lot of recipes say knead until smooth and supple and elastic, but it never really gets smooth straight away. What's really important thing to do now, after all the stress that the dough's been under, is just let it sit, and let it rest up nicely for like 60 seconds, and then we go to town and check if it's ready or not. Okay, it's been a minute. The dough has rested and relaxed up, and the first thing we can look for at this stage is it comes off the table nicely. If you see, it comes off the table really nicely. It no longer sticks everywhere like it did before. Even if I really push it down, it comes off the table nicely. Now, the second thing. Now that the dough has had that little minute to rest up, I can give it a little bit of dust on the top. Only then back upside down and give it a few more folds, a few more goes, and it will become that nice smooth ball that we're all expecting to see. See that? Much better than before. It's definitely got a smoothness to it, and that's point number 2. Now, point number 3 is the fact that it's got some structure now, some elasticity and some bounce. And if you have a look at it now, right, if I did what I did earlier, which is let it dangle, it doesn't break off into pieces anymore. It's got some real resistance. If I pull it this way, it's got some real resistance. It goes so far and then it says no more. It won't go anymore. If I pull it really hard, obviously it's going to tear, but it's got some real resistance. And if I put it here in a ball and give it a good squeeze, it wants to come back. It wants to come back into that ball. It's got some real elasticity and life to it now. Now for point number 4, I'm going to shape it into a nice ball just by folding it in on itself. We've done this before, and turn it back over into that nice ball. This is what I like to call the wedge test. I'll give it a little dust so it doesn't get all sticky to me. And I cut a nice wedge out of it like this. If you cut a real nice wedge out of it, it stays as a lovely wedge, and it's moving, right? It wants to stay as that wedge. You get a real nice clean cut here on the side. It stays as a wedge as you've cut it. It's really got some nice structure to it now to hold that wedge. And the 5th part is the window pane test. If you want to see this in more detail, I did a whole video about the window pane test. Is when you take a piece and you stretch it out under its own weight, making it nice and thin, and you get a really nice, really thin sort of layer of strength. When you get down to that thin bit, it becomes really strong, and you can hold it up to the light, which I won't do now, but there's another video about it. Here you can see it gets really thin and holds that strength still. Now your dough may or may not look exactly like mine, and as a slight disclaimer, that can be down to a few things. One is the recipe, the amount of moisture in the recipe, the type of flour you're using, and 2 is down to your technique, the sort of technique you are using when you're kneading your dough. It may not look exactly like mine did at the end of your 8 to 10 minutes, but don't worry, let it rest up that minute and look for the 5 signs. 1, it's not sticking like crazy to everything anymore. It's not sticking to your table and sticking to your hands. It comes away a bit more cleanly than it did before. The second one is about the smoothness on the outside. After you've let it have that little minute and you fold it into a ball, it's a nice smooth round ball like you're expecting to see, just like what you see on the TV. 2 is about strength and structure. It's about that bounce. Give it a good bounce in your hand. Give it a squeeze up and let it come back to where it wants to go. That's a really good sign of developing really good structure, as is number 4, which is that wedge. Cutting a wedge out of a nice tight ball and it stays as a wedge. You cut it, it stays as a wedge, and it returns to where it was, and so does the other piece. There's a nice clean cut. There's evidence of nicely worked dough. And the final one, number 5, is the window pane test. I will link up a video on here that you can find if you want more information about how to do the window pane test. But basically, stretch a nice piece of dough, good sized piece of dough, nice and thin, hold up to the window, you can see some light through it before it breaks. A really good thing to do that I always recommend in my classes is do all these things. Try all these things before you've kneaded the dough. Try the window pane test, try cutting out that wedge, try that bouncy bit at the beginning before you've started kneading, and then you really appreciate the difference after 8 to 10 minutes of hard work and what exactly you are looking for. Thank you very much, as always, for being here every single week to witness one of my bread making tips. If you've liked this video, please click that thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already and you fancy it, please click that subscribe button. And if you've got any thoughts about today's video, put them in the comments underneath. As always, if you've got a question to ask, just ask. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you next week for another bread making tip. Bye-bye.